We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are discussing the new movie Barbie, if you can't tell already. And we're going to switch it up a little bit on how we do these movie discussions. Sarah has been making it very adamant to me that she feels that we should change it up, so we're going to. We're going to do kind of a non-spoiler discussion at first, so you can kind of get an idea of how we felt about the movie, and we'll go ahead and give it a rating here in the non-spoiler section. And then kind of the second half of what we're going to talk about, it's going to be spoilers, but it's going to be reinforcing what we talked about for our ratings, kind of giving it some more depth, so to speak. And so I guess to just kind of kick it off, the movie was interesting. It was definitely not what I expected. Sarah, you're welcome to chime in on any of this stuff, but right from the get-go, the movie just kind of opened a little odd, I would say. And then we kind of got some of what I expected from the Barbie movie, and then the movie went in a complete different direction than I thought it was going to go. How did you feel about that stuff?
Well, the scene that I have as my background, we see in the trailer, and they're having fun in the car and stuff. And so that's kind of the vibe I was thinking the movie was gonna be for like the bulk of it. And I feel like that's a much smaller portion of it, and that there was a lot of other kind of heavier messaging. I want to say secretly embedded in the movie, but it wasn't very secret. It was very much in your face. Um, but there were some cool things that like I was able to recognize, like the character in Jeremy's background. She wears a black and white striped swimsuit. It's very iconic. If you basically ever played with Barbies, you've probably seen this Barbie. So to see somebody dressed like that as like a real life type Barbie, that was kind of neat to see. And so there's a lot of other moments like that. Of things that like, oh yeah, I saw that when I was a kid or whatever.
It's
So those
probably
moments were neat.
There's probably a very different vibe between the two of us watching something together, because usually we're watching Star Wars, that's all running through my head is knowing all these different things in the background. Whereas in this one, I just was being like taking the movie for what it was, not really knowing any of these little nods to the different things. And sounds like Sarah got a little bit of a different point of view than I did in that respect.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Sarah mentioned is that this movie has some pretty heavy messaging. I wouldn't say that the message is bad by any means. It's a positive message. But the movie is very, very heavily dependent on the message, as opposed to, I think, reliant on what everybody is there for, being Barbie. It's kind of hard to describe that without getting into too much spoiler territory. But I would just say, needless to say, if you're going into this movie thinking that you're going to see some Barbie adventure with Barbie and Ken, and you think it's going to be just like a outrageous, fun-filled adventure, I think you're going to be very, very disappointed, because honestly, that was me. I wouldn't say I was super disappointed, like in the sense of like a 1 out of 10 type film. But I would say that what I was hoping for out of this just wasn't quite it. And I think it's just because of the way that they decided to go with the movie in the long run.
Yeah. I will say that the actors do a really good job for what the movie is. Margot Robbie, she did amazing. I thought that she really portrayed the Barbie character very well. Ryan Gosling being Ken, I mean, he looks the part to me at least. So you can kind of see this is kind of a weird facial expression in this particular picture, but um, I felt like he did a good job with his character too, and there were some other fun characters thrown in there too, like Alan, for example. You see him in the trailer, how he's kind of just out on his own, and like he's not one of the Kens, so he's kind of like an outcast. Um, so I feel like the actors did a good job, at least with their portions. It's really just more so the overall direction they chose to go with the movie is not what I was anticipating, and I feel like it's not really how the trailer portrays the movie to be. Um,
That's the problem I had with it. Because
Jeremy, I feel like you brought up a really good point earlier when we were in the car on our way home after seeing the film. Is if you ever seen the movie, I think it's called Life Size. Is that what it is?
yeah, it's called Life Size.
Yeah. So it's a movie that came out when we were kids about a doll that comes to life and has to deal with the real world and then eventually goes back to being a doll. And that's kind of what were thinking this movie was going to be like, except a much more updated version and specific to Barbie and, those kinds of things. And a typical Barbie Ken adventure, maybe for some of it. And that's not at all what it was. So, um, yeah.
I would also extend on that because I mentioned in the beginning, I was anticipating this being some sort of like Barbie and Ken type adventure. And then we're talking about Life Size where it's going into the real world. We can see from the trailer that there's some sort of crossover between the Barbie world and the real world. Like something is going on because like her foot flattens and we see that in the trailer and it's just something's a little off. So we know that there's some sort of weird crossover, but we don't know exactly what. And with the anticipation of, like knowing what has been done in the past with a film kind of like that, yeah, the expectations were a little different and a little off. The other thing that I want to bring up, at least in the non-spoiler section, is when we were first pulling away, because we saw this at a drive-in, when we were first pulling away, I had said to Sarah, you know, if you were to tell somebody that there was a Barbie movie out, what age group do you think that it was supposed to be for? And if you were to ask me that question, I would think probably somewhere in the elementary school slash early middle school. That would be my guess. And not knowing what the movie is about, that is. But coming out of the film, I felt like this was like high school slash early college based on what it was trying to accomplish. So I feel like the marketing was a little off, in my opinion.
I mean, it is rated PG-13, so I wouldn't expect this movie to be for kids. A Barbie movie in general, typically that you would associate with being for kids, but like many other things nowadays, there are tons of things from our generation that, were very popular when we were kids, and our generation has kind of brought them back to being popular again. And so I think that's kind of what they were trying to go for with Barbie is, Barbie was a toy that I played with when I was a kid. So now that I'm an adult, wouldn't it be cool to kind of pretend that I'm a kid again and see these things? The part where they miss the mark though is wouldn't it be cool to kind of pretend I was a kid again and have a Barbie Ken adventure? That's what I would think, but that's not what they went with. And I guess to kind of I know we're beating around the bush here a lot because we're trying to do no spoilers. This is our first time going at it, but Barbie has a lot of controversy over it because Barbie is seen doing everything. Barbie explores the moon, Barbie is a doctor, Barbie is a teacher, Barbie drives a car, she's got her dream house. So she's got all of these things. Barbie can do anything, which is very empowering for women. But at the same time, and women and young girls, right? Uh, Barbie is also always seen as being super skinny and like picture perfect and the bleach blonde hair and just she's got this very iconic look that can be unattainable for many or kind of create like maybe eating disorders and stuff because you're not perfect like Barbie. So there's that issue too, and that controversy between Barbie can do anything and Barbie's picture perfect. That is the heavy topic that this movie tries to take. Um, and I feel like saying that isn't really spoiling the movie because how they go about it and stuff, I'm not getting into those nitty gritty details, but that's a really heavy topic for a movie to handle, especially when you think of a movie that you thought was going to be like a fun adventure.
Yeah. Uh, the small extension I want to put on that before we get into our ratings is that there's two movies I thought of that I feel like would fit in this realm. And thinking about those movies and what things happen in those movies, I was like, maybe they were PG-13. And I looked them up and they were not. They were rated PG. So those two movies that I looked up, one was How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey, and the other one was The Cat in the Hat with Mike Myers. Now, if you remember, there was some pretty crude humor in those two movies. So it makes me wonder, even after seeing this movie, I still don't agree that this movie should have been PG-13, but maybe that was the push to show that it was for slightly older audiences than we anticipated. So I don't know. I think it's kind of weird to put Barbie into a PG-13 realm. I did not know it was PG-13 when I saw the movie. So
All of the Lego movies are also PG. So that's another movie that you and I were privately discussing, saying that that's kind of like a toys mixed with the real world kind of a thing, and that's also PG.
yeah. So maybe I'd have to watch this movie again. This is not a spoiler, but there's at one point where they allude to an F word at one point, so maybe that's kind of pushing it. Um,
I
there
mean, they talk about having a beach off, and that's in the trailer.
they did, and on the surface, it means nothing. It's just ridiculous. But if you look into it, yeah, I can see some crude humor. But same thing with Cat in the Hat. I can remember a specific joke about a gardening tool that was pretty out there, but yet that was still PG. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, and then they did have some swearing like in the credits and some of their music. So I thought it was weird that throughout the movie there really wasn't. I don't recall any swearing in the movie, but yet there was in some of the credits. So that was kind of weird. So yeah, it's weird thinking about what we expected versus what we got. Um, but we're gonna go ahead and give our ratings here so we can stop beating around the bush and start talking about this a little bit more in detail. I think. Oh, Sarah, you should go first. What rating would you give it?
I'm giving the Barbie movie a 4 out of 10. I was pretty disappointed with how it was marketed and what I was expecting, and then what I got. It's an okay movie once you realize what it is. There are bits of it that have fun adventure. There are bits of it that are cameos of things from when you were a kid, like the outfits and stuff like that. There's some neat things that like when she takes off her shoes and her foot stays in like that high heel portion kind of shape. That was kind of funny. But a couple of those things were already in the trailer. So if the highlights of the movie for me were just in the trailer, that doesn't leave very much left of the movie that was like a surprise that was enjoyable, which to me is kind of disappointing. Uh, Overall, I'm gonna say okay, but not at all what I was hoping for. So I'm gonna go with a 4.
Gotcha. So for me, I feel like the heart of what the Barbie movie should have been, again, that's an opinion. It's not necessarily what it had to be, but my opinion of like where this movie was the strongest was in the like 10 to 15 minutes in the beginning when they were establishing the Barbie world. Like they were going through, we could see that the crew clearly cared about the IP of Barbie. I think that's what you'd call it. I think it's an IP. Um, they cared about Barbie and getting everything right and having like the right Barbie house, the cars, the clothes, the roller skates, you name it. They paid attention and they cared about it. And I thought to myself, like, if they put that much love into, you know, putting this world on film, maybe they got something really good down the line for us. Like I was invested because of the authenticity to the character. And then they went a completely different route. And so I was very, very confused on why the movie turned out to be the way it was. Um, I I don't want to I don't want to take away points on a movie because it's not what I thought it was gonna be, but I feel like
I feel like the movie was really sad.
well, I'm trying to say like, if I went and saw a Star Wars movie that was looked like Star Wars but wasn't Star Wars. We just talked about one, Battle for Endor, not too long ago, and we were like, this movie was bad just because of the movie it was. And I don't know, it's a hard one to be between, but I feel like my gut tells me earlier I thought too highly of it when we were talking in the car. And I think I want to give this movie a 3 out of 10, because I feel like they laid the groundwork so well, and then I feel like it almost had an identity crisis the rest of the way. And I really wanted to like this movie. I really, really, really wanted to. Sarah and I are super excited for this. We were super excited for this weekend because of Barbie and Oppenheimer, and we won't be able to see Oppenheimer until Monday. Um, but we did get to see this movie, and not gonna lie, I'm hoping Oppenheimer saves the day. Um, because this wasn't quite it. But we will be able to go into more detail here in the spoiler section. So Sarah gave it a 4, I gave it a 3. When I go to Rotten Tomatoes, that's going to translate to a 1.5 for me because I do put those ratings on there as well. Um, but yeah, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna go into the spoiler section. You've had a decent amount of time to click away at this point, so let's get into spoilers. I can tell you that I thought this movie was going to be ridiculous just from. So, what did I want out of this film? I wanted this film to be ridiculous. I wanted it to be funny. And I wanted it to be just some random adventure that Ken and Barbie go on that, again, is just fun, ridiculous, possibly somewhat stupid, but enjoyable. I mean, like Napoleon Dynamite, that's a completely stupid movie, but it's awesome. So they could have done something similar. And so, right from the get go, the whole scene that's like behind me, before Barbie comes into play, it's like these little kids in the middle of the desert playing with normal baby dolls, like just picture a baby doll. And Barbie comes out of nowhere and I guess inspires them to take their baby dolls and just smash them to pieces. Like taking a baby doll and smashing the head against the ground in the desert. Like, what the heck is that? So when I first saw that, I was like, I definitely got weird. Let's see how much more weird this movie can get. And so then they transition into the 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was, of establishing Barbie, which was great.
And Barbie Land.
Yeah, in Barbie Land. And then, and this is kind of interesting. Um, I want Sarah to explain pretty much the movie itself, but I guess we start to get this idea that Barbie isn't perfect anymore because she's having some feelings. Do you want to continue off of that?
Yeah, so Barbie's in the middle of her like dance party at her house, and she just randomly goes, "Do you ever think about death?" And the party just stops because nobody ever thinks about death in Barbie Land. Everything's just perfect all the time, right? So that was kind of like her first weird thing. Then she noticed that she had cellulite. Then she noticed that her waffle was burnt one morning, which was really weird because in Barbie Land everything's perfect, right? Because it's toys. They're toys, right? So a toy waffle is always going to look like a normal toy waffle. Why does the toy waffle suddenly look burnt? That's strange. Um, then she went to run on the beach and her feet weren't the normal shape anymore. She had like flat human feet. So she's wondering what's going on with me. This is really weird. I'm having these weird feelings about death and sadness and self awareness. And then all these other things in my life are kind of going strange. And so she goes and talks to Weird Barbie, which is that toy Barbie that everybody played with a little too hard, as they describe it. She's got the weird haircut. She's got coloring all over her face. She's always in this. She's always doing the splits for some random reason. Um, and she basically explains to her that the human in the real world that's playing with you must be have torn some sort of a rift in like the space-time continuum because that's the trendy thing to do right now in movies is space-time continuum things.
Yep.
uh,
Nobody else has a better idea, so let's just mess up continuums.
Essentially, that's what it is. So Weird Barbie tells stereotypical Barbie, which is our main character Barbie. She calls herself stereotypical Barbie because she's just the normal Barbie. Uh, that she has to go to the real world and fix whatever's wrong with her, the person that's playing with her. Well, she gets in her car and they've got some funny kind of sequence of, you got to go by car, then plane, then boat, then spaceship, and finally you're rollerblading and then you're in the real world or something like that. And Ken sneaks into her car with her and, asks about going. And so he tags along and Barbie is trying to figure out, she thought that Barbies were supposed to fix everything, women rule the world. She gets into the real world and it's nothing like that. It's a major patriarchy. And so Ken thinks, wow, that's awesome. I love patriarchy because finally I can be in control. Because in Barbie land, he really doesn't have any rights. He kind of just does whatever Barbie wants him to. Um, so there's kind of that weird balance of Ken finding out what patriarchy is and wanting to bring that to Barbie land. So he goes back to Barbie Land to kind of reinstate with all the other Ken dolls what patriarchy is and let the men be in control. Whereas Barbie is trying to figure out what kid is playing with her. And at first she thinks it's this like middle school kid who winds up teasing her like crazy because Barbie's terrible and makes me think that I'm supposed to be skinny and have all these like perfectly blonde hair and ideal and stuff, and that's not at all what real girls look like. She winds up getting kidnapped by Mattel, so now we have kind of like this not only is Barbie in the real world, but Barbie's also now having to interact with Mattel, the brand that created Barbie and that makes the Barbie dolls. So that's kind of another weird, like, fourth wall type break, if you will. There's a lot of different fourth wall type breaks throughout the film, this being kind of one of them. I'm gonna give an about it because she is in the real world, and so I guess it makes sense that Mattel's there, but it's kind of weird for Barbie to be at the Mattel headquarters. I don't know, it was strange. Um, they want her to go back into this like Barbie box because they don't want like the world to go crazy because now with Ken being, major macho patriarchy Ken, they keep referencing all these weird like Ken toys that are suddenly taking off and like being super popular and stuff. And there's a lot of these very confusing moments where they talk about the Ken toys taking off because what Ken's doing is turning Barbie Land into Ken Land. But yet, obviously, that's not true because, like, it's almost like an imagination type thing. Did any of that make sense to you?
As far as the imaginate, what are you talking about?
The toys, like the Ken toys, because of Ken taking over.
Yeah, basically because he was taking over Barbie Land, the Ken was like the new popular perfect person, and so Mattel was selling Ken products. And since they were flying off the shelves, Mattel was switching to selling his products as opposed to Barbie.
Mm. Um, so where do we go from here? So Barbie, she's realizing that Mattel is kind of controlled by a bunch of men. She sees a boardroom with like 10 men on the board and no women, so she thinks that no women lit work there. One of them being Will Ferrell, which was kind of giving me the Lego movie vibes because he was also kind of like the real world person in that Toy to Life movie too. Um, they want her to go back in this Barbie box. They show her kind of almost being strapped in as if she was a real Barbie toy. But she's like, on second thought, let me go fix my hair. And she runs away secretly. So the rest of the movie is Mattel chasing after her all the way into the Barbie land. She winds up meeting the creator of Barbie. Her name's Ruth. She meets her a couple times throughout the film. She's very sweet and kind of like a loving character who just wants to help Barbie. Barbie escapes the Mattel headquarters because she finds out that the person that was playing with her in the real world wasn't that middle schooler. It was the middle schooler's mom. So she takes the middle schooler girl and the mom. I don't know their names. Do you?
Uh, no, and they weren't credited high
Like
in IMDb without having a deep dive. I
I
can look
don't
it up
think they
though.
even had their names in the film. Like they never called them by name that I can recall. Um,
I'll try finding it.
so while you're looking that up, so she takes them to Barbie Land because she thinks that that's how she's gonna fix everything. And when they get there, that's when she finds out that Ken's kind of taken over and become kind of a major jerk because he wants to rule everything. So instead of Barbie's dream house, it's, what is it? Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House, I think is what he calls it. Because he wants this like macho house, and instead of every day, every night being girls' night, every night is boys' night now instead. And he's trying to be like, it's not very fun now, is it, Barbie? Because like now you're the one who wants to be a part of things and can't because you're not one of the Ken dolls or something like that.
The
And
the mom's name is Gloria and the daughter is Sasha.
oh, that's right. They do say Sasha a couple times during the film. That makes sense now. Like that's ringing a bell now. And Gloria. Okay. So from here, we've got Mattel is still on their tail, trying to chase them down because they want to fix things. And the Ken dolls are going to have a Supreme Court meeting to create a new Constitution of Rights that basically means Ken's in charge of everything and Barbies have no control over anything. And the Barbies that were there, so not stereotypical Barbie, but all the rest of the Barbies have been essentially brainwashed into thinking this is a great idea. I never have to use my brain again. I can just be Kendall's beer go-getter, essentially, is what it turns into, because all the Ken dolls are drinking beer all the time, and all the things that the girls are good for is to bring them beer and give them foot rubs, and that's it. And to look pretty, of course.
Maybe that was part of the PG-13 was the beer.
It could be, yeah. Um, I'm not sure why that was such a big deal. I don't ever remember there being beer products for my Barbies. I remember there being like glass bottles. They were plastic, but they look like glass bottles, but I'm pretty sure they just look like Coca-Cola bottles to me, and I didn't think anything of it, when I was a kid. But anyway, so Gloria and Barbie team up to figure out how do we take Barbie Land back over because Barbie's all depressed and nothing's ever going to be the same. And so she gives her this like mega pep talk about how hard it is to be a woman because, you got to be a loving mom, but you can't just talk about your kids all the time. And you got to be a boss, but you also got to be not too mean. And just, I mean, she rattles off a long list of how hard it is to be a woman because everything contradicts everything. And she's not wrong. She's right. But this is kind of one of those times where it was really heavy messaging of like, I thought this was supposed to be a fun movie and we're just talking about the oppression of women, which is a topic that should be discussed. Yes, I'm not saying that they're wrong. It just didn't seem like the right place to be in a Barbie movie. It was very strange. But anyway, uh, the last part of the movie is Barbie convincing all of the other Barbies to um, basically snap out of it and to go back to being their normal selves, and then to trick all of the Ken dolls to fight the other Ken dolls because they think that the girls, they're kind of like fighting over the girls. That way they're distracted enough that they don't go to the court that day to vote for Barbie Land to be Ken Land. So all of the Barbies are able to vote to keep Barbie Land, the regular Barbie Land. Mattel shows up finally after this, and they Mattel basically is there more just as an observer because the Barbie president, who's like an actual Barbie, but she's also president, right? Is trying to say that like she doesn't want things to go back to the way they were because she wants the guys to have some rights too. And so like instead of them being equal on the Supreme Court, maybe you can have one Ken doll on the Supreme Court. And she says a line, I don't remember exactly how she says it, but essentially that she would give the Ken dolls rights until they had basically as many rights as women do in the real world. So just another one of those kind of jabs at how women are still, even in today's age, kind of oppressed in leadership and authority in the real world. And so Mattel's like, yep, okay, that sounds great. And the last part of the movie, I feel like I already said that, but this is the last part for real. Is Barbie trying to figure out what she wants and Ken trying to figure out what he wants. So Ken is like, it's supposed to be Barbie and Ken, and Barbie says, no, what if it's Barbie and it's Ken? And you need to be your own person because I don't love you. Like, I'm not in love with you. We're not a thing. We're not a couple. You need to be yourself. So he becomes okay with that through some coercion and convincing. And then she talks to Ruth, the creator of Barbie, and essentially decides, I want to be a human. Like, I want to be a real person and try to figure out who I am that way. And so they show some really weird montage of home videos of really random people that doesn't even make very much sense. It doesn't look like it's any one particular family. It's just a lot of random people being people. And I think that was her way of trying to show Barbie what it means to be a human. But she decides to be a human anyway. And so Gloria and Sasha's dad take Barbie to her first doctor's appointment so that she can start becoming a real woman, I guess, where they're going with that. And that's basically the end of the movie. Did I miss anything?
I don't know if I'd say you missed anything. Nothing important. Uh, I guess where I would kind of start to talk about some of the movie. Uh, some of the things that seemed kind of in, when you mentioned that, she asked, "Have you ever thought about death in the like dance sequence?" In hindsight, I think that's kind of where the movie started to part ways with what I was hoping for and where it went. It was right in there. Um, and it's unfortunate because that's very early on in the film. But I think it's kind of confusing because, like, first of all, why would she think about death? Why did Barbies actually die? So, like, why would that be a concept? Also,
You know why she said that, right?
no,
She said that because the person that was playing with her was thinking about death. Gloria, the mom,
death of what?
in general, like the concept of death.
Hmm.
And she was thinking about a Barbie with flat feet and a Barbie with cellulite and a Barbie that had real life feelings like depression and stuff. And so that's why Barbie started to feel those different things and have those different features.
Okay, I could see that. So then, I guess on the flip side of that, is it are there like feelings and stuff in the Barbie world that are established and that are okay? Because like, for instance, the reason why I'm saying this is Ken and Barbie, they say they're boyfriend girlfriend, and they just are because they are. It's kind of weird how that it's portrayed. Barbie says that Ken is her boyfriend, but yet she has all these other things that she does without him, and so he kind of feels left out about it. But he clearly has like a deeper feeling towards her, and it makes me wonder why, like when he is feeling things that are a little outside the norm, why isn't that looked at a little differently? Why wasn't he kind of changing too? It could have had like this interesting dynamic where again we could have went towards that Barbie and Ken adventure, and she's experiencing some weird things, he's experiencing some weird things, and they could have learned about some things together. But instead they went into this route where she's trying to understand herself and he's like, oh my goodness, it is so much better to be a guy in the real world. I gotta bring this back and destroy Barbie Land. Like, that was something. And I thought it was kind of funny. This is, if you catch it, it's funny. Because I don't know if Sarah caught it when we were watching it. But when Ken is looking at like this montage of what society thinks are like men, like the last one that's on there is Sylvester Stallone, and it like fixates on his picture for a little bit longer than the other ones. And then Ken starts to like emulate Sylvester Stallone later on with what he wears. So like at one point he has boxing gloves, at one point he has like a really big fur coat. He has like the bandana from Rambo, and it was kind of funny to see because I feel like that is what kind of some members of society believe, is that to be a man, you have to be XYZ. And a lot of those things line up with like 80s action heroes, which is what Stallone is. And so it's kind of funny that that's the route they went with Ken. Um, but as far as like thinking about, oh, I'm going to go see the Barbie movie, am I going to, would I ever expect to see a movie where Barbie is learning a lesson, whereas Ken is just trying to destroy everything? Like, I thought he cared about this woman. Why is he trying to just steal everything from her and almost make her some sort of like, I don't want to say it, but he's kind of making her seem like property, kind of like a Gaston character from Beauty and the Beast. And so I thought that was a very, very weird way to go about it.
I didn't get the property vibe, but I think he was just more or less wanting kind of revenge and kind of let me put you in my shoes because things haven't been so great from my point of view. Um
She did come up to him and was like when he was the one in charge, and he's stole her house from her. She had come up to him and said like, "Hey, I know you." I'm paraphrasing here, but basically going back to the idea that Ken had these feelings and she wanted to be, more with him, and however you want to say that. And he's like, 1 second, and he walks away. And then I don't know what he does. He like screams or shouts or says something weird. And he comes back and he's like, no, I don't really think so. And it's like, you could have gotten what you wanted. This is what you wanted the whole time. But what you're really trying to do, like you said, he's trying to kind of throw it back in her face.
So the instance that you're describing is that Barbie says, because she's trying to turn him to be on her side, right? So she's saying, "Hey, I'll be your girlfriend," basically, and he says, "Just a minute, I'll be right back." And so he goes and he says something. I don't remember what he says, but it's something to the effect of like "yes" or "sweet" or something like that. And he comes back and he's playing it all cool. He's like, "I'll think about it." That's because that's what men do. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. That is how men are portrayed in movies, at least, is the "I'm just gonna play it cool. Well, I'll think about it. I don't want to seem too eager." That's what he was trying to portray. And so to me, I thought it was funny because that's how I always see men portrayed in movies. And I think that's what they were trying to poke fun at. Maybe you didn't catch it, but
No, but I mean, I can see that point of view now that you say it. I get it. It doesn't change my mind about the movie though.
I don't expect it to.
I thought
Um,
it was also really weird how supposedly you can go from the Barbie land to the real world by going on. See, that's more of what I wanted to see. Like the whole like transition they did between Barbie land and the real world, those little like Barbie moments that they had together. I wanted a whole movie of that because they had like 5 or 6 different settings of
oh
different
yeah,
places
there
they
was
went
the
to.
car, there was boating, there was camping, there was astronaut flying, like spaceship flying.
There
And then
was
there was
snowmobiling,
rollerblading, snowmobiling.
and I think I saw that in a trailer, and I was like, because the way it looks, you can definitely feel like it's in the Barbie land because it seems kind of like a toy that they're on. And so I was like, okay, like they're gonna go hard with this. They're gonna understand the property of, the Barbie IP, and they're gonna, go all in with this because this was cool. Like it was almost kind of like weird slash, I don't know if tacky is the word, but um it had like a cheap vibe to it because the cars are cheap plastic. Um and I liked it. I
It to
liked
look like the toys.
Yeah, they nailed it. It looked exactly like it was supposed to look, and so I was really hoping for that. By the way, did you know that Barbies are super expensive? I looked them up because Sarah and I were having this discussion of like, I had no idea that they made Barbies for this movie. And when I was watching the movie, I had thought to myself, like, for those 10 to 15 minutes in the beginning, I could see why people would want to buy the product. The whole picture of the movie, I can't imagine why anybody would want to buy a Ken doll because I felt like his character was just so out there. He wasn't like the Ken that people I think would picture. Um, but they did make products for this movie, and they're very expensive. The cheapest one I saw on Amazon right now, which is the Ken doll, and he's on sale for $22. Normally 25. I don't know
Mm,
what that is in like Barbie references for. I thought when I worked at Target, they were like $10 a Barbie.
I'm wondering if that's just Amazon pricing. If I pull up,
If I click on it, it says shipped and sold by Amazon. That's not fluff.
Yeah, if I pull up Barbie just in general, you can get a Barbie anywhere from 15 to $20 depending on how many accessories she comes with, and even cheaper than that, there's just plain Barbies for $11 where they just come with a single outfit that they wear. I think they're just cash grabbing the movie Barbies.
Hmm.
And maybe those ones come with extra accessories. I'm not sure. I didn't see. But anyway,
I was also telling Sarah, sorry, one more thing. On the way home, as far as like marketing and toys and stuff, I would have been totally down. Like if this would have been a fun adventure and like I really enjoyed it, I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have tried the video game if there would have been one, but I'm pretty sure there is not one that is based off the film. So I do know there were Barbie games in the past. There was
oh, I've had them and
So
I've played
many
them.
Barbie pony games um, when I was a kid. I'm fully aware that they used to do these things. I think my sister had a couple of them. And so
Mine was a Barbie detective game.
I don't think they would have made it for like PlayStation or Xbox, but definitely on a Nintendo Switch. Because in the past, I think most of them were like Wii or GameCube. They were on Nintendo products, not necessarily Xbox and PlayStation all the time. So I think they could have capitalized a little bit on that with this too, and they didn't. Why? Because the way that the movie went, I don't really think that fits a video game. But if they would have done a Barbie and Ken adventure that was crazy and fun, I think that would have been perfect. All right, go ahead.
One of the things that I mentioned earlier was breaking the fourth wall and kind of pulling you out of the film or making it seem just not what the movie was supposed to be about, just something like really weird. So this one I'm gonna need your help explaining, Jeremy. At one point they mentioned wanting to see the Zack Snyder director's cut of some movie. What was that?
One of them made a comment about, yeah, wanting to see the Zack Snyder version of the Justice League, which I thought was a very weird thing to say because this is a WB movie. WB owns DC, and they're trying to erase the Snyderverse right now, and yet they're here complimenting the Snyderverse. And so that's kind of it was a very weird placement. I can say that.
Yeah, that's one of the instances of breaking the fourth wall of like, okay, this is Barbie land, this is human land, but then there's also like it's supposed to be human land in the movie, and then this is like a human land thing from like real life, and so it's just very strange to have that in there. The other one is there is a narrator talking kind of throughout the movie here and there. They're the ones introducing at the beginning how there were but baby dolls, and then now there's Barbies. So you needed a narrator for some of those types of things. That was fine. But then towards the end of the movie, when Barbie's having her like existential crisis, she's talking about how she doesn't feel pretty anymore and she doesn't feel like herself anymore, and she just basically says she feels like she's ugly. And then the narrator says something along the lines of, if we wanted you to believe that at all, then they did a terrible job casting Margot Robbie as Barbie or something like that, because Margot Robbie looks so beautiful as Barbie, like she really looks like Barbie. And so the narrator made some sort of statement about her being cast as Barbie in the Barbie movie. Like, what is that?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to do. I I say when you were talking about breaking the fourth wall, I think you were kind of confusing it with what it is, but that one definitely is. That
I
one is breaking the fourth wall.
I
Breaking the
might
fourth
not be
wall
using
means that
that.
you're talking to the audience.
Uh,
So like Deadpool is a prime example of breaking the fourth wall.
okay. So yeah, I was using that term very loosely, I guess, as far as weird things that don't essentially what I was trying to get at is things that I don't think belonged in the movie because they brought in another world or element from like our viewer world or element, whether they were talking to us or not. So both those things were just really strange to me. I don't understand why they needed to be in there. Um, I think they were just meant to be funny, but to me they weren't funny. It was just like it pulled me out of the movie. It detracted from it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, I think well we've been talking about the Barbie movie for quite a bit now. So I think just to kind of, top it off is that if you're trying to expect that this movie is going to be, probably one of like a movie like the Barbie movies in the past, kind of a thing where Barbie goes on some adventure. She doesn't necessarily go with Ken all the time in the past, but if you're expecting something like that, you're not going to get it here. Long story short, you're going to get a movie that is centered around the Barbie universe. And then Barbie is kind of realizing that, the Barbie concept was built to, or at least it appears to be built to have like the perfect woman and the perfect job, perfect house, perfect everything. Whereas in the real world, it's actually not that way. And it's, women, uh, I would
Going
say,
through today's adversities.
yes, there we go. I didn't know how to say it the perfect way, but there you go. And, you know, obviously we talked about Ken sees that and tries to take advantage of it to throw it back in Barbie's face. And that's what you're going to get out of this film. Um, Barbie being vulnerable and Ken taking advantage in the way of stealing all her stuff, which is kind of crazy to think about. But I am sure, 100% sure this movie is going to make a ton of money this weekend. I would not be surprised if the following, like next week, I would not be surprised that there's a tremendous drop. Just because, well, it's weird. On Rotten Tomatoes, 90% from critics, 90% from viewers. In my opinion, I think it might drop because it's not exactly what I thought it would be, but maybe other people are embracing it. I don't know.
As a movie on its own, it's an okay movie. As a movie based on how they marketed it, I don't feel like it matches up.
Same. So Sarah gave it a 4. I gave it a 3. Uh, we're going to be seeing Oppenheimer very soon, and so we'll have a discussion on that coming out very soon. But if you enjoyed these types of videos, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when future ones drop, just like Oppenheimer, just around the corner. We also have Haunted Mansion that will be coming out. I think that's next week. I think we're going to see Blue Beetle. I think that's on our radar. And there's a couple other movies out there too. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know there's a whole lot coming in the months ahead. So stick around for those. Drop us a like if you like the video and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on Barbie. Was this what you expected? Was it better than expected? Was it worse than expected? Let us know in the comments. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.